The saloon doors burst open with a violent crack, slamming against the wooden walls and sending a sharp echo through the room. Music died instantly. Laughter vanished mid-breath. Even the piano keys fell silent, as if the instrument itself had decided not to witness what came next. The woman stumbled forward. Her boots scraped against the floor as rough hands shoved her toward the center of the saloon. She barely had time to catch herself before her palms hit the table hard, pain shooting through her arms. The wood was old and unforgiving, scarred by years of knife fights, broken bottles, and spilled blood that had long since soaked into its grain. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. Oil lanterns hung from the ceiling, their warm golden light flickering and casting long shadows across the walls. Dust floated in the air, drifting lazily as if the room itself were frozen in time. Poker cards lay abandoned on tables. Whiskey glasses hovered inches from lips forgotten. Every man in the saloon was watching. Some leaned back in their chairs, curiosity dulling whatever conscience they once had. Others stood stiffly, hands near their belts, afraid to move. A few stared at the floor, pretending not to see. Silence pressed down on the room like a heavy weight. Behind her stood the man who owned that silence. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his presence filling the space without effort. A black wide-brimmed hat shadowed his eyes, hiding whatever thoughts lived behind them. A red bandana rested neatly around his neck, stark against his beige shirt and dark leather vest. A revolver hung at his side, well-worn, familiar. He did not shout. He did not rush. He simply stood there, calm and unchallenged, like a man who had never been told no. The woman clenched her fingers against the table, knuckles whitening as she tried to push herself up. Before she could move an inch, a heavy hand pressed down on her shoulder, forcing her back. The message was clear. Stay down. Her throat tightened. Fear crawled through her chest, cold and relentless. She searched the room desperately, her eyes darting from face to face, hoping, praying that someone would speak, that someone would stand. No one did. Most of the men were strangers, drifters and gamblers hardened by years of violence. Their faces were lined by sun and bad choices. Some held revolvers loosely, not aiming but ready. Others rested their hands on tables, watching as if this were just another form of entertainment. On the far wall, faded wanted posters peeled at the corners. Faces stared back from yellowed paper, names forgotten, prices promised for justice that had never truly arrived in this town. The woman swallowed hard. Only days earlier, her world had been small but hopeful. A future she believed in. A quiet life she thought was within reach. Standing here now, pressed against a table in a room full of silent men, that future felt like something from another lifetime. Please, she whispered. The word barely escaped her lips. The man behind her leaned forward slightly. His voice, when it came, was low and even, carrying easily through the room. This town don't hear please, he said. It hears power. A ripple of uneasy murmurs passed through the crowd. Not agreement, fear. The kind that kept men alive by teaching them when not to interfere. Outside wind rattled the windows. Somewhere beyond the saloon walls a horse whinnied, unaware of the moment unfolding inside. At the bar an old man with a gray beard tightened his grip around his glass. His eyes were tired. He had lived in this town long enough to know how these moments ended. He glanced toward the door, then back again. Still he stayed where he was. The woman closed her eyes, forcing herself to breathe. Tears burned, but she refused to let them fall. Even in her fear, something stubborn flickered inside her. Not loud, not powerful, but alive. The outlaw straightened and slowly turned his gaze around the saloon. No sheriff here, he said calmly. No law. His eyes paused on each man, daring anyone to challenge him. No one did. No one noticed the man standing near the back wall. He had arrived quietly, unnoticed, and taken a place in the shadows. His coat was dusty from travel, his hat pulled low. He said nothing, but his eyes missed nothing. His jaw tightened as he took in the scene, the woman, the outlaw, the silence that allowed cruelty to breathe. His hand rested near his holster. But he did not draw. Not yet. He had learned long ago that speed meant nothing without timing. The woman's breath broke into a sob she could no longer hold back. The sound cut through the saloon, raw and desperate, cracking the stillness like thin ice. The outlaw frowned, irritation flashing briefly across his face, and the man in the shadows took one slow step forward. The floor creaked beneath his boot. A few heads turned. The saloon, thick with fear, teetered on the edge of something it had not felt in a long time. Change. The scrape of a chair against the floor shattered the silence. Every head turned toward the sound. The man from the shadows stepped fully into the lantern light. He was older than most of the men in the room. His face worn by sun and years of hard choices, lines cut deep around his eyes. But those eyes were sharp, steady in a way that unsettled the room. "That's enough," he said. His voice was firm, carrying without effort. The outlaw turned slowly, a faint smile touching his lips. "You picked the wrong moment to grow brave, stranger." The man didn't smile back. He took another step forward, boots echoing across the wooden floor. "I've seen worse moments," he replied. "This one ends now." Tension snapped tight, invisible but unmistakable. One man near the poker table shifted his revolver. Another reached instinctively for his belt. The lantern swayed slightly, casting restless shadows that danced along the walls. The woman opened her eyes. For the first time since being dragged inside, she saw something other than fear reflected in the room. She saw resistance. The outlaw's hand moved, slow, deliberate. That was enough. The stranger drew. The sound of the gunshot exploded through the saloon, deafening and final. Glass shattered. Wood splintered. Men shouted and dove for cover. Chairs toppled, and the piano bench crashed to the floor as the instrument cried out in discord. The outlaw staggered back, shock flashing across his face as he realized something had changed. The stranger moved with purpose, placing himself between the woman and danger. His stance was calm, practiced. He didn't glance at her, not yet. His focus remained on the men still holding their weapons, the ones deciding whether fear or conscience would win. "Drop them," he commanded. For a heartbeat, no one listened. Then another shot rang out, not aimed at a man, but at the floor, inches from a boot. The message was clear. Revolvers clattered to the ground. Silence returned to the saloon, but it was no longer heavy with fear. It was sharp, electric. The woman pushed herself upright, her body trembling. She was shaken, but she was standing. She looked at the stranger, at the man who had stepped forward when everyone else had looked away. "Are you hurt?" he asked quietly, finally turning to her. She shook her head. "No." Outside, hurried footsteps approached. The town, drawn by noise and courage, was waking up. The outlaw was disarmed now, stripped of the power he had worn like a crown. He looked smaller, less certain, realizing too late that fear only ruled until someone challenged it. As the first light of dawn crept through the saloon windows, it revealed a truth the town had forgotten. The West was wild, but it was not beyond justice. And sometimes, all it took was one person willing to stand when everyone else stayed silent.